Warning, the following video contains spoilers. If you don't want this episode spoiled for you, switch the video off now. For those of you playing along at home, there'll be no video to this week's video. The reason being is because I'm very pressed for time at the moment. I don't have time to edit a full video, so here we are doing it all audio, just like in my great fantabuloso radio days. So to actually talk about the episode itself, to borrow a quote from the episode itself, well, that didn't suck. I mean, I wasn't exactly falling out of my chair demanding an episode centered around Suneater, but here it is. And right here, right now, that's alright by me, I think. I mean, in and of itself, the episode was perfectly fine. It was perfectly okay. It was great to have some superhero movements and moments and seeing our superheroes do superhero things. That's great and good and fantastic. And kudos to them for taking a character that I don't particularly care much for and making me care about them a little bit more. This week's episode picks up more or less where the last week's episode ended off, with our hero storming Overhaul's lair. You still got the police jeep shouting, "Oh, how did they know we were there?" When, of course, by this point that would be obvious, and I'm not going to get into a rant about it because I ranted enough about it last week. The episode itself starts off with a flashback sequence with Suneater as a child. At first I didn't quite recognise the voice, so I thought that it was just a flashback to Overhaul's childhood, and my prediction from last week's video was going to happen. It didn't, and what we got instead was cute. It was fine. It was really nice to learn about Suneater as a character, to get to know him and his relationship with Mirio and how the pair of them grew up together. Though honestly, I think I got more out of this about learning about Mirio than I necessarily did about Suneater, and it gives me a clearer idea as to why Sir Night-Eye feels that Mirio is the best alternative to be All Might's successor, and for what I've seen in this episode, I kind of agree with him. You know, not to take it a big break from Midoriya, but, you know, on a blind test, I'd probably go after Mirio, but that's a whole other discussion. This week we featured some tomfoolery from the villain who has a quirk called Mimic. I don't know if that's his villain name as well, where he fused with the building. He went from a guy who kind of looked like a even smaller Danny DeVito to turning into the house itself. And I have, if I'm going to be negative towards this week's episode, I can't help but feel that the visual image, the visual spectacle of our heroes potentially fighting a house would have made for a more interesting fight sequence than what we ended up getting. Maybe it's just superhero fatigue and the fact I'm just kind of at this point done with seeing a hero violently fighting against multiple villains at once, that this episode didn't have quite the same kind of awe and spectacle as it really should do, but that's external things onto this, and I don't think it should take away from the episode too much itself. But as you can tell by the channel's name, I like variety. Variety is the spice of life, and I would like to see more variety and more spicy things happening in my media. That's not to say what we got wasn't interesting. I think that Suneater has a fantastic power set, one that's really interesting, and it's great to see it getting used to its full potential. He uses it in a very creative way, and seeing the exact limits and powers of it within itself is great. However, I would have, again, liked to see him do something a little bit more innovative and a little more exciting with it. Whilst you do get some really neat things happening, I mean, he could have done some other things, maybe if he had squid for breakfast, he'd be able to, like, shoot ink out of his hands or something, or like if he ate a kind of semi-venomous bug, it might begin giving him the ability to grow poisoned spikes to stun the bad guys or something. That would have been cool or interesting. I mean, what we got wasn't bad, but it ultimately ended up boiling down to our hero punching the other guy very hard and kind of sort of overpowering them, then not overpowering them, then eventually via instant training overpowering them again. I mean, I got bored of it with Dragon Ball Super, and here it's just happening again. I mean, again, it's not a bad thing again, but again, it could have been better. Could have been better, but and suppose in the end, it's just something that makes me feel as though I want to see more of it, and that kind of sensation is always a good thing. If I am to be negative, though, to the episode itself, I can't help but feeling, and this is more of a meta thing than anything else, that the whole "we've got to save Eri" bit is starting to feel like the planet Namek is going to blow up in 5 minutes bit from Dragon Ball Z. I mean, I never really had an issue with the idea of elongated or protracted time sequences within media. I mean, usually because of the fact that even though 5 minutes may not actually be 5 minutes of screen time, still what you end up getting is something interesting. But with this, it feels more like they're trying to delay the inevitable. I mean, we all know what's going to happen in the end. We all know that they're not going to save Arian, so that bad's going to end up happening. But at this point, it feels like a case of, alright, so how many episodes can we put that off by? Where if we get into next week's episode and they don't save or reach Eri, that means that this whole sequence of them just getting into that building and fighting the villains one after the other will have taken 3 weeks. Potentially, it could be an entire month when this batch or part of the story ended up beginning before we actually reach Eri, which I'm kind of getting a little bit bored of. I want to see us do more things and to move forward with this. Maybe it's just me. I mean, I enjoy the action sequence in this show. I enjoy seeping into the superhero stuff. But at the end of the day, I can't help but feeling this is just being prolonged and elongated for the sake of keeping it in line with the manga, and I can't help but feel that the manga just did it because they were limited for pages. But that's a whole other thing about adaptation, which we're not going to discuss here because that's not really the forum for it. But with all that said, let us get into the overview and what I thought about the episode as a whole. As a whole, I feel that the episode itself was fine, a perfectly functional episode with a great central fight sequence within it. I can't help but feel that more interesting things could have been done in place of it or to augment it and make it better, but at the end of the day, what we got was still perfectly fine. It took a character, like I said previously, that I didn't really care much for. I mean, he wasn't a bad character, but at the same time, he was never going to be in my list of top 10 characters in the series itself, but in the end, it made me care for him, it made me like him more. I would have liked to see some more interesting stuff going on, but that's always going to be the case for me in most things, but in the end, it was fine. With the episode itself, I can't help but get this sinking feeling that something bad's going to happen with Miro, given the amount of focus we've had on him over this series thus far. Maybe he'll die, maybe he'll lose his quirk, maybe he'll get kidnapped or something like that. And of course, as we can almost guess at this point, it's almost certain that the plan to save Eri is going to end up in failure. But we don't know with that. Maybe we will be shocked to find that she actually does get saved and something else ends up happening. Maybe she gets saved and then recaptured later, we don't know, and we'll just soon find out about it. Well, unless you've read the manga, in which case you probably know by now, but you know what, no spoilers, please. I suppose the rolling question as to what is going to happen, particularly as to whether certain characters are going to die or not, as anxiety building as it may be, I can't honestly help but find it exciting. I mean, this show is terrible in my opinion as far as cliffhangers and ending lines is concerned. This week's line about, oh, you can't eat your friends, just felt strange to me. I really can't get around it. But in any case, what did you think of this week's episode of My Hero Academia? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you shortly, either directly in the comment section themselves or towards the end of next week's video. And be sure to like, favourite, subscribe and do all the YouTubey stuff YouTube wants you to do, because YouTube wants you to do it, and if you do not, they're going to keep doing scary things, particularly to me. But anyway, thank you for watching and goodbye.